What's up, everybody? My name is Ryan Thomas. You're tuning into the Thomas Take Sports Podcast live on Facebook, Twitter at Thomas Takeover. Follow me, as well as YouTube on the Thomas Take Sports Podcast YouTube channel. Back again, and I told you all I would be on today to talk about everything. 32 picks in 32 days. We just wrapped up the third segment of that. We got 1 to 3, we got 4 to 6 done, we got 7 to 9 done. So next week I'll be on to do 10, 11, and 12. The week after that, 13, 14, 15. Week after that, 16, 17, 18. You get the point. So, Easter weekend. I hope everybody had a great Easter. I did. Went out to Tillman's, which is a restaurant out in Albion, New York, with the family, and it was a great time. Really good food. I forgot how good their prime rib is. I just want to throw that out there. Shout out to Tillman's Village Inn in Albion. Solid as a rock. Great place. Great time. Good Easter. And the lead up to this was so unexpected, but within the last few days, prior to Easter Sunday, which was April 1st, April Fool's Day, I'm a massive mixed martial arts fan, massive combat sports and entertainment fan. And I'd say my interest in pro wrestling has dwindled down, to a resounding thud. But I would say that, my interest in MMA, it will always be there. My interest in boxing will always be there. It's just the way it is. And I follow a lot of these guys on social media. I follow Max Halloway. I follow Conor McGregor. I follow Khabib Nurmagomedov. I follow Tony Ferguson. I follow practically every prominent MMA fighter, some of which are not even in the UFC, on social media. And the reason I do that is because oftentimes, I could say, they post things that are very interesting that interact with the fans, and I get to interact with them as well as understand some of what is going on. And 5-6 days ago, I was following, on Instagram, following Max Halloway, who I've tweeted, and he's tweeted me back. It's been pretty awesome communicating with Max Bless Halloway. He posted a picture where he was jumping out of a pool, which harkens to BJ Penn, Max Halloway, the flying Hawaiian, as I like to call him, BJ Penn, the flying Hawaiian. One of BJ Penn's craziest moments outside the cage, he's standing on the ground floor of a pool and jumps out of it without pushing off. And Max Halloway was jumping out of a pool, but he was pushing off the side. BJ Penn jumped out of the pool flat on his feet, flat above the ground, out of the water, and landed flat on his feet. I've never seen any human being do that before or since. And Max Halloway said, it's coming. I thought that meant, well, maybe he's hearkening to the fact that he's not jumping out of the pool flat on his feet like BJ did. Or maybe is he talking about something else? I don't know. I'll just keep going. So I scroll down. Ignore it. But I was thinking, something's off about this. He said it's coming. What's coming? What is it that's happening? April 1st rolls around, April Fool's Day. I haven't been April Fooled all day, and I see that Tony Ferguson is out of his fight with Khabib Nurmagomedov. The fight was scheduled for the fourth time between Tony Ferguson and Khabib Nurmagomedov, set for the UFC interim lightweight title. Interim, meaning that the champion of that division, Conor McGregor, is out. No one knows when he's coming back. No news has been reported as to when he's coming back. Dana White has said, well, I heard a few months ago he said he wanted to come back in September. A few months before that, Dana White said he heard Conor was coming back in March. So it's not looking too good in terms of the return of the Notorious One. And we don't know when he's coming back. We just don't. This guy that is the poster boy for the UFC, the guy that is the biggest star that the company has ever had or created, as I have said before, which is also factual, that they created, they furthered his star power. This man has not fought in mixed martial arts in over 500 days. And yet he still is technically the UFC lightweight champion. Well, when Tony Ferguson trips over an electrical wire at a UFC on Fox set a few days ago, tears his LCL off the bone, the UFC was sent scrambling for a replacement. Enter in Max Holloway, the UFC reigning featherweight champion. Max Holloway won the featherweight title off of Jose Aldo. Jose Aldo won the interim featherweight title versus Frankie Edgar after losing his featherweight title to Conor McGregor. The timeline of this started in 2015. Aldo fought McGregor. McGregor beat him in 13 seconds. McGregor was then slated to fight Rafael Dos Anjos. Dos Anjos goes down. Nate Diaz steps in on 10 days' notice. Conor loses to Nate Diaz on 10 days' notice. And then gets the rematch. Whereas Jose Aldo, who was undefeated for 10 years, champion for 6 years, loses in 13 seconds, and he doesn't get the rematch. We'll just throw that out there. Conor fights Nate again in August of 2016. Wins that fight, very close fashion. 10 people, 5 versus 5, as I always say. 5 would say Nate won, 5 would say Conor won. Very close fight. The fight ended with Nate Diaz in full mount in the 5th and final round. Very close fight. Then Conor gets another immediate title shot at the UFC lightweight division, all while not technically vacating his title. And Aldo fought Edgar at UFC 200 prior to UFC 202. Very strange. At one point, they were going to have McGregor fight Nate Diaz again at 170 pounds while being the featherweight champion and have the interim featherweight title on the line in the same event. That almost happened. How ridiculous would that have been? That would have been terrible. So, UFC 202, he fights Nate Diaz, wins, gets the immediate title shot again versus the somewhat punchy, as I like to say, Eddie Alvarez. Beats Eddie Alvarez in 2 rounds. Really, Eddie Alvarez barely made it out of the first round. And Max Holloway gets a shot versus Jose Aldo. Destroys him the first fight. Then, not many people remember this, then Max Holloway was slated to fight Frankie Edgar. Frankie Edgar gets hurt. Jose Aldo steps in. Max signs the line on the contract to fight Jose Aldo again and beats Jose Aldo on short notice worse than he did the first time. Now, obviously, Max Holloway had a full camp. Jose Aldo didn't, but Jose Aldo took the fight anyway. But the fact that Max Holloway fought Jose Aldo again after just destroying him and destroyed him worse than he did the first time, he literally one-upped himself. Now, the man that is left opponentless, Tony Ferguson bows out. Khabib is fighting nobody at this point. Max Holloway, on 6 days' notice, says that he is going to fight the guy that Conor has ducked for 2 years. And the reason I say that is because Conor was slated to fight Eddie Alvarez. The number one contender of that division at that time was Khabib Nurmagomedov. Khabib was supposed to get the next shot against Eddie Alvarez, not Conor McGregor. But Dana, as Dana has done time and time again, has chosen money over rankings. And Conor got that shot against Eddie Alvarez and won that title. Whew! So, after that, Conor fights Floyd, which would allow Tony Ferguson to fight Kevin Lee for the interim title, because Khabib had to pull out of the, I think it was 209 co-main event. And Ferguson wins the interim title. Then Ferguson slated to fight Khabib after Khabib beat Edson Barboza pretty resoundingly. And then Ferguson steps out due to an LCL injury. And here we are. Max Holloway, the featherweight champion, brings us back around and says, hey, remember me? I fought Jose Aldo. Or actually, let me go back. I fought Anthony Pettis. I knocked out Anthony Pettis. TKO'd him. Easy. Made Anthony Pettis look like a chump, to be honest. Anthony Pettis is not a chump, but in that fight, he got destroyed. Then Halloway says, I'll fight Aldo. Hashtag Jose Waldo. Let me know where to find him. Max Holloway takes the fight with Aldo, destroys him, then takes Aldo on short notice, destroys him. Had to step out of the fight with Frankie Edgar, who was the number one contender this past March. And Edgar lost to Brian Ortega. So Ortega was next for Holloway. And that's where this situation gets interesting. What could happen with, the Ortega fight now that Holloway is fighting Conor McGregor? But if you really want to get to the nitty-gritty and make some sort of a debate, create debate, that's what this is about. That's what sports talk is, creating debate. In my humble opinion, Max Holloway has said checkmate to Conor in terms of his career, in terms of his accomplishments. We could be talking about a scenario on Sunday morning where Max Holloway beats an undefeated Khabib Nurmagomedov, who was 25-0 going into the bout. We could be talking about a scenario where Holloway could beat Khabib on 6 days' notice. The man that Conor ducked for 2 years to fight a 40-year-old boxer. The man that Conor would not fight if Khabib had one leg. And I say that knowing that I'm right in saying that because Khabib has been the number one contender for 2 years at 155 pounds. He's been undefeated. He's destroyed everyone he's fought. And yet injuries and the Ferguson thing have held him back. Also, what has held him back is Conor McGregor. If Conor was as notorious and as badass as he says he is, and as badass as other people say he is, rather than calling out a 40-year-old boxer that his own sport didn't even care to see come back, Conor would have called out the top dog in his own sport at 25-0 after beating Eddie Alvarez and would have said, hey, you're next. Khabib, you're next. You are next to fight Eddie Alvarez. You're next to fight me. Because I just beat Eddie Alvarez. That's badass. Not fighting a 40-year-old, down and out, broke, by his standards, broke, not by my standards, but by his standards, broke boxer who had IRS trouble. Well-documented, valid IRS trouble. Rather than fighting that guy and doing this stupid crossover event that everyone and my grandma knew that he would lose, fight in your own sport. Fight the best fighters in your sport and defend one of the two titles. You had one stripped from you. You're going to have another stripped from you. Apparently, according to Dana White, this Khabib versus Max Holloway fight is for the real title. We could be talking about a situation. Again, let me add to this. We could be talking about a situation where Max Holloway has both the titles that were stripped from Conor McGregor. Checkmate, said Max Holloway. I'll fight Khabib on 6 days' notice. Conor wouldn't fight Khabib technically on 2 years' notice. For 2 years, he knew that Khabib was the number one contender of this division, and he would not fight him. He searched the, quote, money fight versus Floyd Mayweather. He knew it was an easier out. He knew he'd make more money. He knew it was a once-in-a-lifetime fight, which it was, and it was a fun fight. Did he do some good things in there? Yeah, but I knew he was going to lose, you knew he was going to lose, and my grandma knew that he was going to lose. It's like me saying I'm going to race Jeff Gordon in a NASCAR event. You really think I'm going to win? No. Did he hold his own? Yeah. It's like me saying I'm going to swim against Michael Phelps, and for the first 5 seconds of the race, we were tied. I'm not trying to kick the guy while he's down in that regard. He held his own. He did decent things in there. But Max Holloway is one-upping Conor McGregor. Max Holloway is saying checkmate to Conor McGregor. And Khabib just doesn't give a shit. He'll fight anybody, anytime, anywhere. As long as he's healthy and as long as he makes weight. I'm Ryan Thomas. That was the Thomas Take. Take care.